Well, hello there, and welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. This is my monthly Trans Life or HRT update for April 2023. This is actually the second video of this nature that I've done this month. The previous one was on the topic of anti-trans legislation. The last two videos that I've done have been about that. So I'm going to veer away from that for this video and get back to what I usually talk about for my trans life updates, which is me. I just want to talk about me, but it's my YouTube channel, so I get to do that. And also, I hope that talking about my own experience is helpful to others. So, I do just have to say very quickly, though, the news when it comes to anti-trans legislation is getting depressing. I mean, it just is. And, they've moved from targeting, vulnerable youth to now deciding that they are going to once again control the bodies of consenting adults because, freedom or whatever. Okay. Anyways, I actually am going to kind of circle back around to this a little bit because I want to talk about later in the video how this affects me personally. So I am going to talk about my HRT, a little bit about the physical effects that I thought I was done with, but are still happening. And mostly I'm going to concentrate on the emotional effects. And then I'm also going to talk about my emotions in relation to other drugs, not just HRT. So there's a little teaser for you. So let's go ahead and get started into it. Okay, so I've talked in previous videos about how, I'm more than 2.5 years into my HRT. There's no more physical effects. That's done. And particularly with the breast growth, I was told 2 years approximately, that's when it tends to stop. And it did after about 2 years. But right about that time is when I was having some issues with my estradiol dosage, which I have talked about in previous videos, where the estradiol that I was taking, I take it by injection. The estradiol that I was taking had a shortage from Pfizer, had a shortage of it, so I had to be switched to an estradiol valerate, which is a more concentrated form of it, and they were having a hard time, my doctor, that is, having a hard time getting the right dosage for me, and it was kind of all over the place. First, my estradiol levels were way high, and then they were way low, and then finally we got the right dosage. So while all of that was going on, there was no physical changes for me, and so I just assumed with the 2-year thing, I'm done. And then, one night recently, within the last couple months, I'm going to bed and it hurts, and I wake up the next morning and hurts, it's stretching, and I'm like, that's what happens when it grows, when there's growth. And I'm like, I thought I was done, and then it was happening every night for a few weeks, and they're bigger. I don't know what to say. I think I am firmly a B cup now. Pardon the use of the word firm. I don't think they're that firm, but I think I'm a very solid B cup now, whereas I had started wearing B cups because I was just, I don't know, they were probably slightly bigger than what I needed, but now I've grown into them. So, so who knew? After 2 years, you still keep going. I guess it can go up to 3 years, so maybe I still have some more to come. I am currently, as you can see in the thumbnail of this video, at almost 2 years and 9 months. I'm rounding up a little bit. 2 years and 9 months will be on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, by the way. Um, but this is like a week before that I'm doing this video, so close enough. So, at about 2 years and 9 months, I'm still experiencing some breast growth. So, that's good because it's the thing that I kind of was most dysphoric about, which I've talked about in previous videos. So that's kind of exciting. Um, so that's the physical aspect of it. There's a lot of emotional stuff that I'm going to try my best to explain. It's really difficult to put into words, but I'm going to give that a try right now. All right, so the emotional aspect of it. It's just something that, as it's happening, it's so subtle. The changes are so subtle that for a long time, was not consciously aware of it. But then here I am at 2 years and 9 months, and then when I sit down with it, I sit down with my feelings and how I relate to my emotions as a human being, and just kind of really dig into it and just realize how drastically that has changed since this journey began. And I'm not just talking about since pre HRT, but even like in the first 6 months or so, the early stages of my HRT, how drastically that has changed, and just how much more easily like I just relate to other women. And I have had comments multiple times from other women who just say, well, I just view you as a woman. You're just a woman like all my other women friends. Like, because we just relate. This is where it's hard to put into words, but I have a hard time articulating this, but we just relate on this emotional level. And when I really sit down and like examine it, like just how drastically different that is from how I experienced emotions when I was testosterone driven and was not on estradiol. And it took a while to get to the point where I am now. We're close, as I said, closing in on 3 years, and it's a drastic difference. And one example that I can think of, and I mentioned this in a video I did a couple months ago about my relationship with grief as a trans woman, is that I feel like, as a man, when I was presenting male and I didn't have female hormones and I was more testosterone driven, when I experienced an emotion, like I experienced that emotion, roar, like all in. Like when I was grieving and sad, like that's all it is. Whereas now it's like, and I was explaining this to one of my girlfriends, one of my cis female friends, about this, and she was like, when I was explaining the part about like going, rah, I just experienced it. She's like, what would that be like? I'd never experienced that in my life. So it's interesting to share perspectives with my cis female friends, because I have a different perspective on what it's like to experience emotions, and I can compare and contrast. And whereas they've only experienced it that one way. But I just really, really am noticing now just how drastically that is different, and just how very, very much a woman I am in that regard. And I'm gonna bring back up a little bit of the anti-trans stuff, because it just boggles my mind how simplistic that view is, what a simpleton view it is. Oh, you have a penis, you're a man. You have a vagina, you're a woman. And that's all there is to it. It's just so much more complex than that. They are not taking into account the female hormones that are coursing through my body. But I also don't want to pin it all on that, because there are trans women who have chosen not to take HRT, and they very much are just as much a woman as I am, or as any cis woman is. And I think there's something inherently in us, even without HRT, that is just more womanly, being a woman. And it's hard to put into words, which is another reason why maybe some simpletons just don't understand it. It's just so black and white for them. You have this body part, and you're a man. You have this other body part, and you're a woman, and that's all there is to it. But it's not. It is so complex, and that is why my female friends all are like, "No, you. I just think of you as one of the girls. Like I just can't imagine you being anything else." And I've heard this several times, and that's what open-minded cis female women will think of trans women once they get to know them. Um, so, all that's very interesting to me. Oh, and I also got to throw this in there too because I was watching a YouTube clip of The Daily Show with Desi Lydic is hosting it this week, and she was talking about the trans legislation, and she made a comment like, "Everyone knows having a vagina is not what makes you a woman. The fear of writing too many exclamation points in an email is what makes you a woman." And I laughed because I have many times erased the exclamation points in emails and text. So I thought that was very funny. So, okay, there you go. Desi has declared I am a woman because I erased my exclamation points. Like, this is. uh, Anyways, that's just kind of an example of how it's like so much more complex than body parts. Anyways, I didn't really mean to go off on that tangent. I also kind of wanted to discuss um, other drugs I've been doing occasionally. I have mentioned in previous videos my LSD use and how um, when I've done psychedelics, it's like really connected me to my femininity, and I just feel like at the core of my being, like at the depths of my soul, that I am female, and it's just so gender affirming. Um, I've kind of moved away from the LSD recently. I feel like I get too heady sometimes, where it just gets stuck in my head. If you've done it before, you may know what I'm talking about. But I have in small doses, not too much, doing some Molly and some MDMA. And I think occasionally in like small doses, it has been helpful for me to be more connected with my emotional state. I would caution people not to rely on drugs for that use. I've seen too many hippies who think that they can do psychedelics, or they can do Molly, or they can do ayahuasca is the big one, or they can just do that and go, well, I don't need therapy because I just did the drugs. But that's not really how it works. I think psychedelics can be an avenue to exploring your feelings, your emotion, your thoughts. I think Molly and MDA is more emotional, and psychedelics are more mind related, more heady. And I think those all can be tools to exploring those things, but you need to then take what you get from your experiences on those drugs and then carry that on to your actual real life. And if you're lucky enough to have therapy, like an actual therapist, like incorporating that in as well, just kind of tying it all together, everything. And I think it's important to do the work when you're completely sober, too, to do that emotional work. But I think these kinds of drugs can be a tool to get you there, but you can't just overly rely on them. And when I've been doing like MDMA or Molly, uh, it is helpful for me to like just kind of. And then when I talked earlier about like sitting down with my emotions and state and where I am, like a lot of that has started when I'm on these drugs, and then continues when I'm completely sober. But it's a good way to connect with that. So when on these drugs, it's like some of the things that I've been going through are like thinking about my being more aware of my emotional connection to men, and how I was completely shutting them out over the last year or so, out of fear and out of bad experiences on dating apps. So like all stranger men were like no no no, and like just shutting them out and putting up this big wall that I didn't even realize was there. And like kind of doing Molly kind of helped me see that, and like, oh well, I gotta like take that wall down. Like I gotta open the door up a little tiny bit, You still got to be cautious about that door when it comes to men, especially certain cis men. Still open the door just slightly, but you still got to open it a little bit, you know. So those are the types of things that I've been working through. But it's definitely things that you got to work through also when you're just like not on anything. And if I had an individual therapist, that would be helpful too. I have not yet found one that works for me. I'm in a group therapy with the trans group, which in its own way is helpful. It's a little different, but it's helpful as well. But those are all the things that I've been working on. But and also with Molly, I gotta do small doses and on occasion, because when I overdo it, my body says no. It was the same thing with alcohol. I've learned over the years, like any substance, my body will tell me when I've done too much. And when you do too much Molly, like for me, like I get depressed as fuck the next day. Whereas if I do the right dosage, I get a little bit of a depression, but I'm able to like just kind of, oh, this is just the Molly, post-Molly depression, I'm fine. Whereas when you do too much, it's like, so I just don't do too much. Anyways, so that is my tangent on that. Now I wanted to follow up on the tease from the beginning of this video, go back around to that anti-trans legislation and how it affects me, and just the state of, not just that legislation, but just the state of the world, and just hearing people on TV, like hearing these legislators, hearing these Republicans, hearing these people, anyone, just dehumanizing us as trans people, other trans people, the stuff that's going on with that Montana legislator and how she's just being completely shat upon right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. That kind of thing, just hearing those things, it affects me. Like, just it sometimes will make me just internalize it and feel less about myself and feel like I'm not feminine enough and like I'm not a real woman and all these things because of that stuff that's just out there. So when there is transphobia against one trans person, it is against all of us. We all feel it together. Even if me in my daily life, I've mentioned before, I'm pretty lucky where I live. I very rarely have any personal issues personally with people, being transphobic or looking at me the funny or saying funny things, or it's very rare where I live. I live in a very good place for that. People are just like, whatever, queer people, they're like not even halfway the weirdest people in Portland, whatever. So it's, even with that, like just having all this stuff out there and having to watch news reports and having to watch people like say shit, like it affects us all. So that's another part of my emotional journey that I have to deal with. But it is motivating me to want to contribute and to do something about it. Okay, I think I've rambled quite enough for this week, month I should say. Please join me again next month where I will do another Translate video. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about in that one, but I'm sure I'll think of something between now and then. Also, if you're into Star Trek by chance, I'm doing my Star Trek Top 100, so you should check that out. Alright, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.